This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Morning decisions. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel, maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
The Presidencies of the United States is a proud member of the Evergreen Podcast Network. As someone with a passion for history, it is always a joy to meet others on this podcasting journey who take their passion and push forward with a project to share it. My guest for this episode took the kernel of an idea for a musical on one of the lesser-known presidents and transformed it into a production that had its first run on Memorial Day weekend this year, 2026, as of this recording. And I'm so thankful to have had the opportunity to talk with her about this experience. Hello and welcome to the Presidencies of the United States. I'm your host, Jerry Landry. Callie Perrone is the writer and creator of William Henry Harrison, the musical, and as you'll hear about in our discussion, also performed on stage in the musical's first run as Anna Sims Harrison. I cannot thank Callie enough for joining me for this episode and for sharing insights about her creative journey in bringing this musical to life. I'll have more information about the musical available on the page for this episode on my website, presidenciespodcast.com. There you can also find past episodes of the podcast, links to more about all the American presidents, and information on how you, yes, you, dear listener, can help support the Presidencies podcast. With that said, and without further ado, after this brief message, let's get to my conversation with Callie.
Google is offering free AI training and tools to U.S. small businesses so they can innovate in ways both big and small. Built by Google experts, the Google AI Professional Certificate equips small businesses with practical AI skills. Through hands-on projects, they can start using AI to get more done and unlock new opportunities for their business. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at grow.google/business.
Callie, thank you so much for joining me on Presidencies today. I'm so excited to talk to you about your work.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my first time ever being on a podcast, so I'm very excited to join you, and I'm so grateful that you reached out and that you heard of us in the first place. So,
Absolutely. So I had a listener and follower who shared information about the musical with me, and I was like, oh, yes, I need to connect here because I am a Harrison fanatic myself. So I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to learn more. So thank you. Well, and to get us started, let's go ahead and start with what got you interested in William Henry Harrison to begin with. When I tell people I'm interested in William Henry Harrison, they're usually like, who? The 1 month guy. Okay,
right.
What?
Right. No, we've got a line in the very first song in the musical that's like, no, the long speech in the Rain Man. So yeah, the 1 month guy, the long speech in the Rain Man, whatever it may be. So may or may not surprise you, but the historical figure that I was actually genuinely interested in was Alexander Hamilton. And I say that with the caveat that I was very historically interested in him, as the historical figure years before there was ever a musical. I was always kind of like a U.S. history person. I mean, I had all the American Girl dolls, was very interested in all their stories. And I think that was probably my foray into U.S. history at a young age. That was always kind of my subject then in school going forward, and in high school as we were kind of learning about the Revolutionary War, founding of the country, all those things that Hamilton has kind of a heavy hand in. I got very interested in him as a historical figure. And yes, I mean, all these founding fathers are problematic in their own ways. I'd say he was maybe the least problematic of the big named, so, and also, I mean, for all the reasons that Hamilton, the musical, is interesting in a hit were the same reasons that I was interested in him as this historical figure. Of course, you got the duel, you've got, the Mariah Reynolds scandal and publishing all the, he was this like complex, interesting, like this really grand story, the origin, from Nevis to, so all these reasons I was a Hamilton fan. And I think we were kind of like a Hamilton family history wise. My brother was, played Alexander Hamilton in the history fair and, won first. I don't know. We had a whole thing. And then the musical came out in, what was it? 2015, 2016, whenever that was.
2015, 2016, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. And so my mom heard mumblings first that there was like, there's a musical about Alexander Hamilton coming to Broadway. We got to go see it kind of thing. Never thinking that it was going to be this like huge cultural phenomenon. We thought it might be this niche thing for history nerds like us, right? Obviously it blows up, and rightfully so, but the joke was that my friends kind of made to me was, oh, Callie, you should have written Alexander Hamilton. Like, you should have written Hamilton. At least you can still write Harrison the musical, which was like, haha. They got the same amount of syllables, Alexander Hamilton, William Henry Harrison. But, one is kind of this genuinely interesting at face value story with all the, you got the revolution, the duel, the scandals, and then on the other hand, you got the guy that died in a month because he didn't wear his coat in the speech in the rain. And so it was kind of that juxtaposition and the syllables that was like, haha, funny joke, right? And that joke was made back in 2016 or so. I didn't do anything with it, but the idea kind of was like rattling in my head. It's funny. And then it wasn't until like 2021, I was with family and we, the joke came back up. And at that moment, for some reason, I was like, you know what? It's still funny. Let me see if there's actually a musical to be written. Because, I mean, as much as I feel like I am, a U.S. history nerd, and I know a lot of the fun facts and a lot of the, the interesting stories and all that, like, minutia that I get really excited about, I didn't know much about William Henry Harrison except for what everyone knows, if at all, right? Like those little pieces of trivia. So I didn't really think there was going to be a full-length musical worth writing, worth seeing. But I was like, let me just look. Let me just like dive into his Wikipedia page. And I will say, hopefully not getting too long-winded myself, but I thought that in itself. So I'm going through this. Okay, get back to that. I'm going through the Wikipedia page, and I'm realizing, like, wait a second. There's like actually, in addition to the funny nonsense of it all, there's an interesting, like, societally relevant story to right now that is genuinely worth telling. And we can get into that. But, so much about the Whig Party and the opposition to Andrew Jackson. And also, you have Harrison as this political opportunist who's willing to try to put on this man of the people persona when that's not really his reality. And yeah, I think there's social commentary to be made about both political parties right now and like really valid criticism. So the more I'm looking at it, I'm like, wait a second, there's really something here. And then the next question is, well, can I write it? Because I've never written anything like that before. I've never, like, I'm coming at this as kind of like a history nerd, not like a musical theater person, not a writer. So it was really just ended up being like a passion project. And what I wanted to say too was I thought there was also talking about kind of these parallelisms, because it really is like it's a parody in the style of Hamilton. And in addition to the parallelism between like the grandeur of Hamilton and this kind of like mundane obscurity womp womp of Harrison, there's also, I think, Lin-Manuel famously read, I think it's Eric Foner's book on Hamilton. Might not be Eric Foner.
It's Ron Chernow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to Eric Foner, though. I think he was our history book in high school. Yes, Ron Chernow's book on Alexander Hamilton is like this 400-page book, and that I thought there was kind of something funny about me, on the other hand, just skimming the Wikipedia page, and like that's my education. And obviously, I ended up doing a lot more research than that. But yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it. And then it wasn't until, I started compiling these data points, this is an interesting song. That would be an interesting song. Okay. And even finding when possible, these added moments of parallelism between Hamilton and this Harrison musical, these like kind of added Easter eggs or, added bits of comedy and interest for the Hamilton fans that would ideally one day be seeing this, assuming that I could get it off the ground. And I'm really thankful that now I have. But after like kind of, brainstorming it like that, it was like, well, wait a second. I have no idea if I can actually write this. So then a few months later, I was stuck home at Thanksgiving. It was like November 2021. I was getting ready to go visit my family for Thanksgiving. And then that morning I was like, not feeling great, took a COVID test, positive. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm spending the weekend at home by myself. my husband, actually, he ended up getting COVID too. So we were basically stuck home trying to even isolate from each other a little bit. And I was like, maybe this is the time that I start trying to work on this, this silly historical parody musical. And it took me a few days to kind of write that first song, but I was like, wait a second. I think there's something here. Like, I think maybe I can do this. So that's kind of how we got to this point. I just kept chugging along, and it wasn't always easy. I'm not necessarily a natural, but I really just kind of kept at it because I believed in the end product, but also I was having so much fun with the process.
Absolutely. Well, and getting to that, because your bio on the website mentioned that it took you 3 years to write the musical. So I was just wanting to see kind of what sustained you with seeing this project through to completion.
Yeah, and I think it was almost, it was a little more than 3.5 years in the end, maybe almost 4 years to write it. And you're right, it does say 3 on my bio. And then after that, it was like, wait a second. I'm not great at math and I'm not great at technology.
Don't worry, the years, it's just like, oh my gosh, that was 4 or 5 years ago? What?
Right. All I know is, I started writing it November 2021. We finally put it on stage Memorial Day weekend 2026, and I finished writing it about a year ago. And I'll say, I mean, it wasn't honestly until maybe I wrote the third song that I really felt like, okay, I can do this. And there were multiple moments of challenge throughout the way. I mean, at first, I was kind of chugging through. I think I got like 7 songs done in 2 months. And I was like, okay, I'll be done within the year. And then there were some songs where I knew what I wanted to say roughly. Like I had that big picture, but it was almost like pulling teeth to get it down on paper the way that I wanted to communicate. Or some songs where like, if I wrote it, it kind of made sense. And then I'd start singing it and I'm like, maybe not. So there were some songs that literally took like 2 songs in particular that took 6 months. And it didn't mean that I was writing them every single day. It like some of them I had to step away and hope that the space would allow me to come back with kind of a fresh perspective. So it wasn't always, smooth sailing, but I really was like, I was having, even in those moments, I was really having fun writing it. I really believed that this would be a fun, interesting, like educational, engaging, but also really silly end product. And I would show my family and friends and husband along the way. I'd give them these like little snippets and they were enjoying it. And so I knew it wasn't just like, me laughing by myself as I'm writing this, like, and I would have family and friends that would like be checking in. How's it coming? How's it coming? And like their enthusiasm helped kind of keep me going with it.
Absolutely. And for our audience, if there's anybody out there with a passion project, please listen to what Callie's saying, because it's all about, keeping on, you can do it, and having that support system is so important.
And yeah, I completely agree. I mean, yeah, just do it. Just try it, whatever it might be. You might surprise yourself. And I'll say too, though, because so far we're only talking about the process of writing, but I finished writing it and then it was like, wait a second. Now what? I've never brought a musical. I mean, what do they say? From page to stage or whatever it might be. Like, everything, writing it, yeah, that's something I could do all by myself in my room, at my kitchen table, whatever it might be. I didn't, but then it was like, wait a second, it's done. And I have no idea how to do the next step. So I think I want to give a shout out to the cast and crew, the producers. We do productions, everyone in the cast and crew, like it was not their day job. They all had their own day job, their own lives going on, and were so passionate about theater that they, dedicated their time, their extra time to it. And so I think there's something so valuable about, and I feel really lucky the way it all worked out, but something so valuable about surrounding yourself with like passionate, dedicated, really incredible people that like I could not have done this alone. And they all help bring it to life.
Absolutely. And that's what so many people, I think we have this idea that it's just one person doing something, but and I'll say, even with podcasting, it's really the efforts of so many, it really does depend. It takes a village to really lift something up, but especially something like a musical.
And
Yes.
I didn't even know what I didn't know, like I didn't even
Mhm.
know where to start. And I was so lucky. I reconnected with a friend from college who was getting interested and who has done, some stage managing and production before. And then she connected both of us with another friend of hers, same thing. And they brought their wealth of experience and they really, and again, we do productions, Karina and Aaron, they really like brought this to life in a way that like beyond what I ever could have expected. So yeah, really it takes a village, takes a whole team. So I want to make sure that they get their flowers as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and before we get to more of kind of the production, because you had mentioned that you had done some more research. You didn't just stop at Wikipedia, which kudos. I'm so glad. I, I will admit, Wikipedia is a good reference, and I'm glad that you did a little more of a deep dive. And so I just wanted to ask, and because obviously you can see behind me, I love research. I just had to ask, like, what's your research process look like while writing the musical? And it sounds like you were familiar with, like, Hamilton, that early Republic period, but how familiar were you with this period of U.S. history prior to starting work on the musical?
This was honestly like, yes, I felt very familiar with like the revolution and kind of the early days, Constitution and then I mean, pretty much until right, like I feel like in history class and otherwise, I mean, there's a reason that the Revolution and the Civil War are kind of these like big points in our early U.S. history that there is such an emphasis on. There, understandably, there's a little more meat there. They're very interesting periods. So, and in addition to that, I think that's pretty much like I was saying, and it's kind of nodded at multiple times in the musical itself. But like in history class, they kind of teach you this period up until maybe Andrew Jackson. And then they skip the whole Whig party, which, yeah, I'm sure we'll chat about. And then they take you right to Lincoln and the Civil War, and everything in between is kind of this like blank space. So I knew a little bit. I was familiar roughly with Henry Clay and Daniel Webster. I knew about the Whigs, but like not very well. And then I knew, with Harrison, I knew the goofy fun facts. Same with Zachary Taylor and his cherries and milk, whether or not that's actually, truly how he died on the 4th of July or, but, but no, I was not very familiar with this period. And the more that I looked into it, that's when I really realized like there's something genuinely interesting in this little known, often overlooked period of history. And I'm really glad that I got to take that deep dive. And then for, anyone who saw the show and get to kind of take them along for that ride. But yeah, and in terms of research, yeah, I had a handful of sources. I'm going to be honest. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but I will
No
say,
worries.
maybe a little bit lazy, but this is how I did it. And I don't regret it. It's whatever the sources were, even if they were, some books, something that I could get online and control find, because and highlight and not just highlight, but like copy paste into my Google Doc, because my Google Doc, it started off so long. I was just dumping everything I could find in there, writing notes about, oh, could this be this? Can we connect this to this? Like this in itself, this is a song. And yeah, I thought about more so traditionally reading books, like maybe if I was writing a research paper. Then I'm like, you know what? I'm doing this for fun. I'm I'm gonna do control find. I'm gonna copy paste what I need into my Google Doc, and I'm gonna take it from there. And that process worked for me. But I promise it was not just Wikipedia. I had some legitimate sources.
Well, and I'll say that's one thing nowadays. Thank goodness we have so many resources available digitally. It just makes it so much easier to research. I love my physical books. And when you can actually search in a document, make sure that there's actually something that you're looking for in there, or, go on to the next one, it is so much easier. So I completely understand. And especially when it's just a fun passion project.
Yeah. And what's fun too is I the way that the musical is situated, it starts and ends on like a pub trivia scene. So, a group of friends, present day, at pub trivia, and the question is, which president served the shortest term in US history? And nobody at the trivia knows it except, so it's a lot of what's his name, throwing out other guesses. And then, the one person who is the lead, the in-world playwright of the musical, he's the one that gets it, William Henry Harrison. And in the world of the musical, he basically says, like, yeah, I'm gonna write a spoof on Hamilton. I'm gonna, in the world of the musical, he skims the Wikipedia page, and everything that you see as the audience, in theory, is from the in-world playwright skimming the Wikipedia and throwing this thing together. And that was not really my process, but I did think it was like a funny enough bit.
Oh, yeah.
That's because, yeah, like I said, it starts and ends with pub trivia. It's this like modern day group of friends, and the person that plays William Henry Harrison, that character is also the in-world playwright. And the way we have it is that he convinces all of his friends from pub trivia reluctantly to be in his play. He casts them as the other characters. So there's a little bit of, faux tension between, they sometimes go back and forth between the historical character they're playing and their modern day character. So there's a lot of fun things to build on there, but I made sure that the Wikipedia was a through line.
I mean, you had to do
Had
it.
to.
You had to. Well, and I noticed in the first run that you had over Memorial Day weekend that you portrayed Anna Sims Harrison. So I was wondering, what did you learn about her in the course of writing about her in the musical and preparing for the role?
Yes. So I will say, similar to not having written or done written anything like this before, I've also never done theater. I think I may have played the moth in a 4th grade rendition of James and the Giant Peach. That was, I think, my first and last time on the stage in that way. But when I was writing the musical, like I said, I kind of had to make sure it didn't just work on the page. I had to sing them out loud and make sure these are all working. And I have demos of me doing every part of every song. And so I was constantly singing all the songs, all the parts, to really make sure that it all worked. Not only the song itself, but the flow of the whole story. And while I was going, doing that aspect of it, I really liked singing the songs that I had written for Anna Sims Harrison, not just because it's in my vocal range, but because I thought it was like kind of an interesting story. And basically, and here's the thing too, it's like, you read these facts, and then part of the fun of turning it into a musical is you get to imbue them with characterizations and kind of dramatizations and filling in the blanks of like, okay, well, this is the fact. How do you think that made them feel? How did they react? And, you play it up in different ways. But she's and she's someone you don't know that much about in real life, which is part of, her final ballad. But her log cabin burns down in a fire. And she survived that. But all of these documents that could have been like historically relevant burned down. So we know bits and pieces of her life. But one through line that I kind of picked up on was she was very content, living life in her log cabin, raising her family there. And she really just wanted her husband, William Henry Harrison, to take a local job, to, eventually retire, settle down with her. So this settling down was this theme that I built for her based on, that reality. But when you start to read it, so yeah, that's kind of what she wants. She kind of wants this nice, simple life with her family. She wants her husband to have a good job. She celebrates his ambition, but like, dang, does he really need to be the president? But, you read it and you know that about her. And then you cross-reference that with all the readings about William Henry Harrison. And okay, so they meet and he's in, he's in the army. Oh, but good. He retires from the army. Yay, she's going to get to settle down with him. And he takes a job in the town. And they're all out basically in this, like, modern day Ohio is where they are. So he's kind of like, he starts out as an East Coaster of sorts. And then he goes and he's like, starting this frontiersman type of lifestyle, joining the army efforts there. And that's where they meet, is out there in Ohio. And great. Okay, now he's taken this job as, secretary of the Northwest Territory. It's a nice local job. She's so happy. Wait a second. 1 year later, he's out as the congressional delegate to Ohio. And then he's doing that for maybe 2 years. They get dragged to Philadelphia, which is like the nation's capital at the time. And then you keep reading, wait a second, 2 years later, now he is the governor of Indiana. They get dragged to Indiana. Okay, now he's the governor of Indiana for a few years. But wait, he wants to rejoin the war effort right before the War of 1812. And they're battling with Tecumseh and a bunch of native tribes. And I will say, like, in the musical, like, yeah, this guy has done some horrible things, and we do not gloss over it in the musical. I think we thread a good needle of really addressing the atrocities, not just of William Henry Harrison himself, but of, the early and you can say current U.S. And while still allowing it to be this comedy about this coatless buffoon of a president, to be honest. And anyway, so now he's joined the war effort. Okay, now he's back out to war. Oh, good, he retires from the war. And then, oh, wait, he's going to go out for 10 years and go serve in Congress. Oh, you stay here, Anna, raise our, 10 kids. Oh, and now he's senator for a few years. And then he finally comes back. Oh, wait a second. He's going to go be like an ambassador to what is modern day Colombia. And so he's going to go for a few years to South America. And then he finally is back and he retires. And and then, so he's retired for what? But a few years, when he is literally called out of retirement by the Whig Party to run for president. And he's not even a Whig up until this time. He's just an opportunist, to simplify it a bit. But I'm seeing this from the perspective of his wife, who has been waiting. She is now 65 years old. He is 68 years old. And, there's not a lot, like I said, a lot of the documents, a lot of the records on her burnt down in a fire. But one thing, a quote from her is, "I wish his friends had left him where he was, happy and content in retirement." Because she was she was proud of him, but like disappointed that now, oh my God, he's the president, the oldest president to date until Ronald Reagan, when they finally settled down. So I thought that made for kind of an interesting character arc for her, starting like naive and youthful and hopeful, and kind of getting beat down by who I kind of interpreted to be, in some ways, a pretty dismissive husband. And I play that up. I don't know exactly what their relationship was, but that's how I imagine it given those facts. And then on top of that, she's very reluctant to be the first lady in the first place. Mm-hmm. She thinks that, she's not going to be well perceived. She doesn't want to be in the limelight in that way. And on top of that, like I said, she's 65 years old and she's getting sick. So she's like, I'm not going to take this horse and buggy from Ohio to Washington, D.C. in the middle of the winter. I'm going to stay home and I'm going to, focus on feeling better. And then when it gets warm in the spring, I'm going to join you. And obviously, he died within the month. So she wasn't even there when he died. She got the news, out in Ohio, and which I think is such a sad ending to this character who's really just been waiting and waiting and waiting to be, together and content in retirement. She waited, 50 years for that pretty much. And she didn't even get that. And then you kind of imbue it a little bit. But something that I found was so interesting is, right, he's the first president to die in office. So she's the first widow of a president, a U.S. president. And so they're like, oh, well, what do we give her? They gave her a widow's pension, and they gave her free postage stamps for life. Never has to pay for a stamp. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. So, you kind of play it up a little bit. You think of how can that be more, bring it into the storytelling of it all. So I kind of made it so that you can only imagine if he's been here and there and here and there throughout their whole relationship up to this point, including the presidency when they were apart. Writing letters is probably a core part of their relationship. If he's just stopping by every few months or every few years, they're probably writing thousands of letters throughout their, 45, 50-year marriage. So I kind of saw that as like, I don't know, are you a Twilight Zone fan?
Oh, yes.
Of course, yeah, okay. This is what it made me think of. There's the episode where the guy, he just wants to read. He just wants to be left alone to read. And then he's like in this, I don't know the details of it, but he's basically in this big library of sorts, and something happens, the world outside disappears. He's the only person left on Earth, and he's so excited that he has all the time to read all the books in the world, and then his glasses break. So it reminded me of that. And this is a woman who's been writing these letters her whole life. And meanwhile, they're in debt for a variety of reasons. Even when he's the president, they are in so much debt that they can't get out of. So I don't know how expensive these postage stamps were at the time. I turned that into a little bit of a bit about how it's so expensive to be writing all these letters for these 40 plus years. And finally, she's got these free stamps. She can send all the letters in the world, and now she has no one to write to. So, it kind of characterize it. And I think we play up aspects of it for comedy too. There's comedy, I think, in the relationship between these spouses. But I do think it's a sad story, and then to be forgotten in a way, right? And she never wanted to be in the spotlight, but I still think there's something worth exploring. Well, what does it mean on the flip side, though, to be a footnote in history? And the last thing I'll say on this long ramble, and you can reel me in, but another thing that's interesting about her is, they have, the Siena College Research Institute, they'll publish their U.S. First Lady ranking. And she is not included in the ranking. She's an asterisk in the ranking. So I kind of made that an aspect of like her final song. These free letters, her cabin burns down, and she's just this like forgotten footnote in history. She's like nothing but an asterisk. And anyway, I thought there was something really, I was so interested in that aspect of her character. And I thought there was an interesting parallelism to it between Eliza and Hamilton. And I'm sure this was an experience, whether or not your husband was, going all off and everywhere and becoming the president or what have you. Like maybe it was a common sentiment of women back in this day. And I thought it was interesting exploring that.
Well, and it is interesting, that well, and it's funny with the podcast, like I do a series on the cabinet members and a series on the vice presidents. And when we have a point where somebody actually brings their wife or children to DC whenever they're, serving in Congress or the cabinet or as vice president, it's like, oh, wow, they actually brought their family.
Yeah.
And there are so many times that folks just, like you said, just leaving their family and just going, oh, well, I'm going to serve over here, or I'm going to DC, wherever. Yeah. And Anna has been one of those figures I've been trying to dig for years to learn more about her. And like you said, there, unfortunately, primary resources just aren't there as much as we would like. She was actually, one of the most well-educated first ladies of the time that she wasn't able to actually put into practice because she never made it there. But then also the fact that, and you mentioned there are 10 kids, and by the time he was president, I believe that 5 of them had already died.
I think if not more, I think more, because by the time she was only outlived by one of her children.
Yeah.
Although she lived about 20 years after, I think, he was president. So yeah, maybe you're right at that time. But yeah, I mean, on top of that, and I didn't get into that in the musical because I thought that was sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's like these series of kind of gut punches for this woman. And yeah,
Yeah.
I found her to be a very interesting figure for how little we know about her. And I got really excited about portraying her, both in the comedy and in kind of those more, painful or like pulling at the heartstrings moments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I just love, and it really sounds like, and there is so much about this time that it's like, what? Hold on, what's going on here? So I'm glad you were able to add some comedic elements to the story as well, but also it sounds like you really got into kind of the heart of who she was and some of the challenges that she faced in life.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a lot of it you're kind of pulling together, but I definitely think so. And when I was writing this, I had no intention of being in it, but I really was I was feeling a connection, and an excitement about portraying this character. And I thought, well, like, when else am I gonna, I'm not gonna audition for any other musical. I don't have the acting chops per se. So maybe I can convince my producer friends to cast me in this one.
I mean, now your resume and performance is a little longer, so
Yeah, it went better. I mean, honestly, I surprised myself. I think I didn't have as much stage fright as I thought I would, and I think it actually went quite well. Dare
I
I say? And you know what? I
I
joked to
love it.
myself, okay, well, even if even if I'm a horrible actor, at least I know all the words.
There you go. You know the lines.
Yeah, but it did go well, and it was really fun to be on stage and kind of portray that.
I love it. Well, and in terms of characters in the musical, besides the president and first lady, I saw that the cast list included roles for Henry Clay, Daniel Webster, and John Tyler. And so I was wondering, Callie, how did each of these fit into the story that you were trying to tell with this musical? And were there other historical figures from the time that you considered including?
Yes. So, like I was saying, it's kind of like this modern day group of friends turned, putting on the play and the play within the play. And there's 5 core friends around this trivia table. It's, the playwright turned William Henry Harrison. And then the other friends get turned into Anna Sims, he tells them, okay, you're playing this role, you're playing that role. Anna Sims, Daniel Webster, Henry Clay, and John Tyler. But there's other, there's a handful of others who were in the initial pub trivia scene who then get cast as ensemble members who wear like multiple hats. So you'll see, for example, there's some cameos by Martin Van Buren, for example, and then you have some cabinet members and some other early wigs, Thomas Ewing and William Seward, and then you have like a surprise cameo at the end. Spoiler alert, by Abraham Lincoln, because he used to be a Whig. And, so there's others that have these little moments that I think are really fun and interesting. But I saw, your Daniel Webster, in addition to Anna, who I've talked enough about. I see, politically, I see Daniel Webster, Henry Clay, and John Tyler as really core to this time. And I will say too, so, they, Webster and Clay, they found the Whig Party. And they are, I think there's so much that's like fascinating about the Whig Party, especially in comparison, or not in comparison, especially related to modern day. And another spoiler, but the last song in the musical, it's called "What's the Moral of the Story?" And it's kind of like, did any of this even matter? Kind of prodding it from that. And again, it's a comedy. And so we throw out a few reasons that that this might have actually mattered. And I'm realizing right now I'm skipping way ahead of myself, but I'll say it and then I'll
No
stop.
worries.
But one of the reasons that I really do think this matters that we mention in the last song is that a political party, a sustainable political party, can't just exist in opposition. It needs to actually stand for something. I think there's a lot in this moment in time to be learned from that. And what's interesting, so about the Whig Party, which most people might be like, maybe not listening to this podcast, but most people that are not already interested to some level in U.S. history might be like, Whigs? Who are the Whigs? I mean, like I said, I just barely knew about them before doing this. And they form specifically in opposition to Andrew Jackson, and they call themselves the Whigs because they think it's this like sick burn of a name, because the party in England called the Whigs is the party that is in opposition to the monarchy. And Andrew Jackson is acting like he's king and not president. So they're like, we're forming the Whigs in opposition to Andrew Jackson. Our sole reason for being is get this man out of office. And that's valuable. He should, there's a lot of reasons he was not a good guy and not a good president. So that's valid. But they kind of form this coalition as broad as can be. And Daniel Webster and Henry Clay are so indicative of that in themselves. And, again, you play up a lot of these things for the musical, but the facts are there and they're interesting once you actually, know them. So it's like, you got this Henry Clay, Southern slaveholder. He's a former Democratic Republican. And then you got Daniel Webster. He's a Northerner. He's an abolitionist, and he's a formal Federalist. And the Federalist Party is gone by this point. And they come together in this coalition, even though they have vastly different beliefs. They're like, to get Andrew Jackson out. And what can they agree on? Okay, they pick a few things that they can agree on ideologically, but really they're trying to cast the widest possible net that they can for their party. And it's successful to a degree in the moment. At the time, and minutia of it all, at the time they didn't know if Andrew Jackson was going to run for a third term or not. It was the Washington precedent, but it wasn't an amendment, like it wasn't in the Constitution at that time. So maybe Andrew Jackson was going to run again, but if he didn't, surely he's going to pick somebody who is going to just carry out his policies. And Jackson basically picks Van Buren, his vice president. Van Buren wins the election. So now they're kind of facing off against Van Buren. But anyway, Jacksonian politics, no matter what, right? That's what they're opposing. Mm. And what's interesting too, and that's where William Henry Harrison comes back into play, even though he was not previously a Whig, right? But he's an opportunist, so, oh, wait, the presidency? Sign me up. The reason that they pick William Henry Harrison, to simplify it, but is because he's basically all these things that Jackson is, all these reasons that the public rallies around Jackson, but ideologically, he can be, molded into whatever the Whigs want him to be. And there's this quote by John Tyler, who's vice president turned eventual president, that mentions, Clay and Webster pulling the strings. So that's kind of like a through line, is they're like pulling the strings. They're the policy wonks. They ran for president plenty of times, each of them themselves. They could never win, right? So they're like, how can we get our ideals up here through kind of this figurehead of William Henry Harrison, who, like Andrew Jackson, is a war hero in the War of 1812. So nationally, still beloved as the war hero. He's this frontiersman, similar to Jackson. He's this common man. And again, and what's fun about the musical is all these aspects of Harrison are played up for the public. There's like asterisks to all of that. He's not a common man. He's not exactly a frontiersman. He does not come from these humble origins. He's not this man of the people, but they play him up like that and the public eats it up, right? And so that's why they appoint him, is because he's got all these things that are similar to Jackson, but ideologically they can mold him as they want. They can pull those strings. And now, let's see, I got myself a little off track. Let's see if I can get back to it. Hopefully this is interesting to your listeners.
No worries. They're used to me talking about Harrison, so you're good.
But yeah, so I think there's something so interesting about this party that, okay, and this is where I was going. Okay, so they pull Harrison into the fold for all those reasons. He wins in a landslide, and they have their moment, right? The Whig Party's in power. We've moved past the Jacksonian democracy of Jackson and Van Buren, which, don't worry, we put a big old asterisk in the play. We make it clear it is ideologically flipped from a modern day Democratic Party. So don't get too attached to the terms. But they achieve their goals in this moment, the Whigs, right? They get this Jacksonian, viewpoint out of power. But then their party literally collapses because they took the approach of like, oh, let's just not take a stance on slavery. Let's sweep that under the rug, because they wanted to get this wide net, the Southerners, the Northerners, the abolitionists, the slaveholders, everyone in between. As long as you don't like Andrew Jackson, join our party. So, it works for a moment, and then it completely implodes. The issue of slavery cracks the Whig Party down the middle. It is the reason for their downfall. We have a song about that I am particularly proud of. And that's where Lincoln makes a surprise cameo. But I think that there's a lot to that. I think that there's a valuable lesson now. And now you're like, wait, who, the Whigs, right? So that was really their undoing in a lot of ways, their failure to take a real stand for something rather than just against someone. Yeah. So and then there's the whole John Tyler of it all, which I think is fun too, as the vice president, the first ever vice president. There's this constitutional crisis because a president's never died in office before. So it's like, wait a second. So yeah, we know it says vice president becomes president, but like for the next few weeks until we hold an ad hoc election for the rest of the term, like the Constitution's not really clear. So Congress has to have, like, there's a constitutional crisis. Congress has to come to a decision based on their best interpretation of what the founding fathers intended, which was very unclear. And they decide, as we have today, okay, it's the rest of the term. So John Tyler now is president for, 3 years and 11 months, pretty much. And he's an undoing in a lot of ways of the Whig Party himself, because once he gets into power, he completely shirks the Whig agenda, which, don't worry, we have a whole song spelling out all the components of the Whig agenda and all their blind spots, really. And that's kind of a through line too, is like these men, these opportunists, getting themselves in positions of or proximity of power. And yeah, once he's in power, John Tyler, he throws out the whole Whig agenda. He basically goes back to his old policies, and yeah, he totally goes rogue. Anyway, and then the Whigs finally, they're like, okay, all right, well, that kind of went haywire. Our guy died in office. This guy, he took it off the rails. And they only appointed John Tyler as vice president because they were doing their cast their wide net strategy. Oh, he's a former Southern Democrat, Jacksonian Democrat. So let's get him on our side. All the more reason people are going to vote for this ticket. So then they're like, okay, all right, well, Tyler, super unpopular ultimately. Now's our chance again. Let's get another war hero, man of the people, frontiersman. Great, we're going to pick Zachary Taylor. Here we go. Whigs win again. And then the whole cherries and milk, or whatever it was, maybe gastroenteritis. Now he's, second Whig elected president, died relatively quickly. So I'll stop my tangent there, but that's why those characters are central to the play. And I think it's all very interesting, and all things that, your average person probably doesn't know that much about.
And like you said, I think that there is some, because we see this same pattern in political history, this, trying to build this broad coalition of folks. And, the danger is when you're trying to be too generalized and, oh, yeah, we've got an umbrella for everybody. What are you really for? And then when you get to a place of governance, oh, that's what you think?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. No. We are in complete opposition here.
Right. Like there's real value in taking a stand for something, not just against somebody, even when it's valid to take that stand against somebody. Absolutely. But it's got to be more than just that.
Absolutely.
And I think that is, in my opinion, one of the most legitimate, modern day resonance and takeaways from the play. But at the same time, we do end it on a note of like, yeah, okay, here's a handful of reasons why maybe this mattered, maybe this is worth studying. But if nothing else, even if you don't buy into any of that, well, at least this is good for your pub trivia team. At least you've learned something in the last 2 hours that you can take with you to pub trivia. So it does end on that fun note as well. But I do think that there's genuine value to some of the learnings of this forgotten, overlooked period of history.
I love it. Well, in terms of this this process and as you said earlier, taking it from page to stage. I just wanted to ask, like, what was the greatest challenge that you faced in this process of actually making it to opening night?
I probably don't even have a great answer for you because the people that were involved were so impressive, in my opinion, and many people's opinions. I'm very happy to say that the show was very well received, and I absolutely hope that we're able to do it again. I would love to. I would say, and it was maybe a challenge, definitely of sorts, but one that we overcame was because it was brand new, because it has never been done before. I think it's you can write down your best ideas of how you're going to move people and props on and off, and how you're going to do a little, I'm not a dancer. I'll add that to my list. I don't dance. I don't act. Well, maybe now I act. I don't know. But I definitely don't dance. Neither does Anna Harrison. That's the other reason that I like that role. And I realized maybe I was writing it for myself before I knew I was writing it for myself. If she just hangs out in her log cabin, she stands up sometimes, but she does not dance. But anyway, so like in the script, I would be like, dance sequence here, right? I don't know how to do anything like that. But all these things that you can't fully figure out, even if you have your best idea, until you have human beings and a place to kind of rehearse. And really, that's where production takes the lead. That's where We Do Productions took the lead on all of that. The stage managing aspect, the dance, choreography, and blocking. But sometimes there was a lot of trial and error, right? So I think some things we never like bit off more than we could chew, but some things maybe took a little more time to finesse than maybe you would think at the outset, because you just don't know until you can really workshop it with real people in the space. So I would say that's probably the closest thing to an unexpected challenge, but it all worked out in a way that I'm just so proud of. And I'm so impressed with everybody involved because like I would have been happy enough if people were just kind of doing jazz hands for 2 hours. But our director and producer, Karina, also our choreographer, she had she gave the show so many really fun dance sequences. And as you can imagine too, a lot of coat dancing, Harrison avoiding coats
Oh, yes.
dramatically during the song about how and actually I didn't even get to that, but what I think is so funny too is, right, everybody knows about, he gave the speech without his coat on in the rain, and that's why he died of pneumonia. Well, probably not, right? And then you find out that he actually he made a habit of taking walks in the rain, or sorry, a habit of taking walks without his coat on in the month following. And so it's like, maybe that's how he got sick. So we get into that. And there's like a really hilarious dance sequence of Harrison avoiding all of these coats. And anyway, and I love a motif. I mean, there's a lot of coat puns, shedding, like metaphorical, riding on the coattail, shedding a coat. Whenever there's a pun, I'm making it. But then, you get even farther and it's like, wait a second, actually, modern day research shows that he probably didn't die from any kind of illness regarding his coatlessness and his coatless cold walks in the rain or the cold winter weather. He actually probably more than most likely died from like typhoid fever and septic shock from the horrible quality of like the swampy water in DC, and the water that they got in the White House, which was basically like all, pooling in the swamp of DC. So, and don't worry, we have a song about that. But anyway, I went on a little bit of a tangent there. All that to say, though, yeah, no, I think it was so beyond what I could have expected because of the talented people that chose to dedicate their time to this. And so many fun dance numbers, so many fun, backdrops and props and like all these things that make it so much bigger than the words that I wrote. And same with like the actors really like, taking things upon themselves and building these characters up to be even funnier than I could have imagined. And yeah, I could go on and on about the cast and crew. They're fantastic. But yeah, that was the challenge and the fun of bringing something that's never been performed before to the stage.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, somebody's got to be the first to do it. So well, now that you're at this place, you've had your opening run. I had to ask as we're wrapping up our conversation, what's next for William Henry Harrison the musical? And do you have a new project that you're working on?
The answer is we'll see. I am still like kind of basking in the glow of that opening weekend that just went so much better than I ever could have imagined. We got so much positive feedback. We have a lot of people who are saying you have to do this again. Oh, and we had very lucky to get we had quite the wait list. So there's people that have seen it that are like, you got to do this again. I want to see it again. I want to bring all my, family, my friend, whoever. And you have all these people that didn't get a chance to see it. And I'm sure that, maybe we capture even more people that haven't heard of it yet. So I would love to be able to do it again before thinking about any other projects. I just would love it if William Henry Harrison the musical can have a life beyond this fantastic weekend that we just had. And if we do, I will absolutely be sure to let you know, Jerry. I would love to have you there, and I can offer, I will be in touch. I will make sure, however long a wait list may be, that you have a ticket to see it. And yeah, I'll keep you posted. So nothing officially in the pipeline, other than a hope and an ambition to be able to do it again. And if we can do it with the same fantastic folks, even better.
Well, you know how to reach me. And yes, I would love to be in the audience. I'd love to be able to see it for myself. And also, if you've got some new dates coming up, always glad to promote on presidencies.
So appreciate that. I really think you'd like it. I really do. Even just like from having this conversation and how clearly knowledgeable you are about this kind of blip in US history. A lot of the songs and a lot of the moments, there's like little jokes in there that I don't think anybody's going to get unless they are like literally a historian or have like studied up. But I kept them in there because I'm like, A, you never know. B, it's funny to me. But I think if you were there, you might be laughing or, kind of particularly enjoying a handful of little moments that might be just for you and a select few other historians in the room.
I love it. I love it. Well, Callie, thank you so much. Congratulations again. And I know as somebody who has my own passion projects, labors of love, I know how much it means to be able to send it out into the world. So congratulations on being able to have that great weekend. And yes, definitely bask in it as long as you can.
Thanks so much, Jerry. I had so much fun talking with you, and I really appreciate you, spending the time and highlighting this really wacky project that I just, I'm so happy about it all. So, thank you. I will be in touch with any future dates, and so appreciated getting to know you.
Wonderful. And likewise, and thank you so much for sharing some of this process. I think that really helps the audience to kind of understand what all goes into this and how much work it is, but also the joy and fulfillment of being able to see something through.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much again to Callie Perrone for joining me for this episode. I cannot thank her enough for sharing more about how she was able to take that initial idea and transform it into William Henry Harrison, the musical. To learn more about the production, just go to whhthemusical.com. I'll also have a link on the page for this episode on my website, presidenciespodcast.com. There you can also find past episodes of the podcast, links to more about all the American presidents, and information on how you, yes, you, dear listener, can help support the Presidencies podcast. Special thanks to our patrons for all their support to help the work of this little podcast that could to keep going and growing. If you'd like to support the Presidencies podcast for as little as $1 a month and get access to an ad-free feed as well as patron-exclusive episodes, just go to patreon.com/presidencies to sign up. If you would rather not make an ongoing commitment, there are other ways to support. I have a research wish list available at tinyurl.com/presidenciespodcast with books identified that will help to prepare for upcoming episodes. Thank you so much to Jeremy, who recently sent me a couple of books on Andrew Jackson and the history of St. Louis that were on my wish list to help with research for the Monroe Presidency series and beyond. Word of mouth is still the most effective marketing out there, even in the 21st century. So please share information about the podcast on social media or with friends and loved ones who love history. You can also leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or anywhere else with that capability. As always, please feel free to reach out with any questions or comments via email at presidenciespodcast@gmail.com. You can also connect with me on social media if you haven't already. I'm available on Facebook, Blue Sky, and Mastodon as Presidencies, on the formerly known as Twitter at Presidencies89, and on Instagram and Threads as Presidencies Podcast. Last, but certainly not least, I thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay safe and healthy, be kind to one another, and take care, dear friends.
Have no fear, Chosen Foods is here to defend your favorite foods from the forces of seedy oils and sketchy ingredients. With cooking oils, salad dressings, and mayo, all powered by the good fats from 100% pure avocado oil and simple, delicious ingredients. Chosen Foods.
Hi, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. Are you looking for a beach read this summer? May I suggest your big wireless bill? It's got suspense, mystery, a slightly flat, emotional arc, and a shocking twist where you realize you've been overpaying the entire time. Fortunately, though, Mint's story is better. Every plan, $15 a month, even unlimited. That's it. Happy ending, 0 tears.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.